I hope you are ready today to challenge the ordinary because we are going to turn the watercolor world upside down and put an exciting twist on traditional watercolor painting. This striking watercolor flower tutorial is guaranteed to leave your friends in awe and ignite your imagination in ways you never thought possible. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Now, a little bit later on, I'll tell you the story of how I got myself into this, but at the moment, let's just focus on the supplies we need for a painting like this. First up is watercolor paper, and today we will be a little bit unconventional and be using black watercolor paper. This brand is called Stonehenge. It's 100% cotton, and this particular pad is 8x10 with 15 sheets, although I believe they do have other sizes as well. I'll leave some information and a link for this paper in the description of this video if you're interested in giving it a try, and trust me, I think you're going to want to. Now, there are a few options on how to paint this picture on this paper. We can just paint it on freehand and not worry about any sort of outline at all. But if you've watched many of my tutorials, you know that I personally prefer to have some sort of guide or drawing. So you can just draw the outline onto the black paper with a pencil yourself if you want to, and that works just great. But with many of my tutorials and paintings, I also like to provide outlines for you that you can simply trace onto your watercolor paper to help you get started. However, because this paper is black, tracing an outline on here using a light table or even just a well-lit window like we often do is really not an option here because you can't see through the black paper like you can with white watercolor paper. So I'm going to show you how you can transfer this image on instead. Now here I have my flower outline printed out that I actually drew on a different piece of paper, but this is printed on a plain white sheet of printer paper. And as a side note, I will have this outline available in my Etsy shop at a 20% discount this week because I really do want you to give this a try. But all that I'm going to do here is turn my paper over to the back side. Then I'll take a pencil. This particular pencil is a 6B pencil, so it is a little bit softer graphite, but you can just use a regular number 2 pencil instead. Then I'll simply color in the back of the paper, really kind of focusing it around where the outline lines are that are on the other side. Now you don't have to color the entire page if you don't want to. Just make sure that you get a lot of graphite here where those lines are and get it nice and dark. Then after I have the area covered with the pencil's graphite, all I have to do is turn it back over, place it on top of the black watercolor paper, and I might just clip it together with a paper clip to help keep it together. Then I'll take my pencil, or you could even just use a pen, just something with a nice point that you can trace over the lines with. You'll want to push down on this with a good amount of pressure as you go, because this is what is going to transfer this image off onto the paper using the graphite on the back. I'll skip through this process just a little bit so I can speed things up, but I think you get the idea. Basically, I've made a homemade carbon paper. Then after you've traced on the entire image or outline, take the top paper off and voila. Let's see if you'll be able to see this on this camera, but here is my black paper and I have a penciled in outline perfectly transferred from the original outline. Pretty neat. Now, I've known about this method for a long time, but I personally just prefer tracing on images using a light table because I feel like it's faster, but tracing just simply doesn't work with black paper, so this is a great alternative today. All right, so now that we have our black watercolor paper with the outline drawn on here, we can get to the fun of painting. I'll just pull out my watercolor paints, some clean water, and a paper towel. Then I will just quickly tape my paper down with some artist tape and we are ready to get started. Now next up, we of course need some brushes. I think we only need 2 for this piece today, maybe the number 10 round and the small number 3 round. Then lastly, to make this painting work and show up on the black paper, we actually need some white watercolor paint. Now I will be honest with you, this is actually my first time using white watercolor paint in a painting. I'm not at all against it like some watercolor artists might be. I have just never found the need for it. So this is going to be fun to try today. Since this is not a color I use, I don't have it in one of my wells on my palette, so I will just be putting a little bit in the corner of my tray to use for today. Okay, I'll just take a touch of this paint using the number 3 round and water it down really good. I just want to create a really light wash of this white. Then I will also pull out some of this white paint in a much more concentrated format with not much water at all. Now, using some of this really watered down paint, let's begin by painting in one of the smaller petals and just see how this goes. And actually, I think this still might be too white. I really just want a slight hint of this color for the background layer. So I'm just going to dip my brush in some water and add that to the painting to sort of dilute this even more. Okay, I think that is more like it. So now that I've covered the entire space of this petal with the water, while it is still nice and wet, and that is the key to this technique today, it does need to be wet. I will take a little bit of the more concentrated white paint with the tip of the number 3 round and just paint basically an outline following along the edge of the background wash. But basically, as I paint this line of paint around the edge of water, we want a tiny bit of the paint to be touching a little bit of the dry paper to create more of a hard edge of color. But at the same time, we'll be painting this stroke to also touch the wet layer of paint as well. And this side is going to be blending and spreading into the paint within that wet area. And it's going to create a slightly more soft and blended edge. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but every once in a while I drop my brush while I'm painting, which is the most frustrating thing ever. Sometimes it misses my painting and sometimes it lands right onto it. And unfortunately, that is what happened to me today. But luckily, I was able to take some clean water on my paper towel and rub most of the goober off. I just hate it when I do that. Then of course, if you need to, you can at any time add in extra paint in these areas to make it more of a bright white, creating a variation of values and depth, or you can even paint some lines of paint and create some vein lines amongst the petals. It's a little bit harder to do it on this small petal, but I will show you more of that when I get to the larger ones. All right, I chose to start with a smaller petal so that I could sort of just test out the technique and see if it even would work. And I think it turned out okay. So let's move on to some of the larger petals next. I think I'll pull out the larger number 10 round brush for these bigger petals though, so that I can cover the area a little bit better and more quickly. And you know what? I'm finding I really don't need a lot of that white color in this background area. We really can kind of just use the tainted water or dirty water from our brush wash bowl, and that seems to be enough color for this. That way we can get a really good deep contrast once as we add in the concentrated white paint. Now, I've demonstrated this transparent technique in other videos, so I can leave links for those in the description of this video if you need a little bit more in-depth explanation of what we're doing here. Now, you might notice that anytime I lift my brush off the paper, it kind of tends to leave a little bit more paint in that spot, but I actually kind of like that. The thing to keep in mind is that just because of this, your painting is going to probably turn out differently than mine, and that is okay. In fact, I'm really just going with the flow of the paint here. If I get a larger spot of color spreading out, I'm just going to let it do its thing rather than trying to control it too much. Now at this point, I've got the white paint all around the edge, so let's paint in a few thin lines of color throughout the center of the petal to sort of represent some thin vein lines. And actually, I think I'd like to try something else. Let's just experiment a little bit, since at least for me, this is a totally new type of painting. Let's grab a little bit of yellow paint, maybe some Gamboge, and add that into the center part of the petal closest to the middle of the flower, and let that spread out a little bit. That is kind of fun because the yellow is combining with some of the white paint, so it is making it more visible and it is keeping it pretty light in value as well. I'll just touch up a few spots of white color here and there, and then maybe I'll come back in with a little bit more yellow and add that paint in to emphasize this yellow look even more. Very cool. I really like how this is turning out. Now, these two petals I've painted are sitting right next to some of the other petals on here, and I don't want them all to blend together and blur, so I'm going to let these first two petals finish drying completely before I paint right next to them. But while we wait, maybe let's start painting some of the petals on the second flower. Really, I'll just be painting these in the same way, using the same technique as we have just done, again adding in a touch of that yellow color to the centermost part of the flower. I hope you are enjoying this very different and yet fun type of watercolor painting today. I really just felt like I've been in a little bit of a rut recently with my artwork, and I kind of wanted to experiment and try something new. Now, in the past, I've painted acrylic paints on a black canvas before, and the paintings can turn out quite stunning that way. And so I just had the thought, is there such a thing as black watercolor paper? So I did a little bit of searching on Amazon and found this brand of black paper, and at the same time I bought some white paint as well as a set of metallic pans of watercolor paints, which actually also look really amazing on black paper. I've only done a few test samples with that, but I think I will have to create a tutorial with black paper and metallic paint sometime too. In fact, if that sounds interesting at all to you, or if you'd like to see and try more of what I'm doing today, let me know that in the comments section. This is all a little bit out of the norm, and you might even say breaks the rules, but really, I personally don't think there should be rules when it comes to creating artwork, so let me know what you think. Also, if you find you are enjoying the tutorial today and my painting and teaching style, make sure you give the video a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. Okay, well done. I think this first flower is dry enough that we can come back in here and paint in a few more of these petals now, again, just in the same way as we've been doing. Now let's let those petals dry and jump back over to the other flower again. All right, great job. This looks amazing so far. I really love the see-through, transparent look that we've got going on here. We only have a couple of finishing touches left to add on this, and we can call this painting done. First up, let's add in the little stems that we have at the bottom of the page. Now, if you want, you can use some metallic paint for this and it would show up pretty nicely, but I kind of wanted to challenge myself and try painting everything on this piece with just regular watercolor paints that people would normally have at home already. So, to make the olive green color stand out a little bit better, maybe I'll mix it with just a touch of the white paint. I think that color mix definitely helped it be more visible, but while this is still a little bit wet, I think I'll go ahead and add in a touch of white paint and add that in off to the side of the stalk to create an even more highlighted area. Okay, pretty good. Let's go ahead and paint in the other stems. Now, because I am just experimenting with this piece today, maybe I'll try this next one a little bit differently. I think I'll try adding a lighter version of the green first, and then maybe take some of the darker olive green and add that in later to the side of the stalk, and then I'll just see which way works better. I don't know. I think in the end, both of those ways really ended up kind of the same. So you can pick whichever way you'd like to paint in the third one. And you might be wondering why I even have a third stem when there is not a third flower. But really, I just added this in here because I thought it added something to the composition, but you absolutely can leave it out if you'd rather. Now, those stems don't stand out as much as the flower petals, but that's actually what I was hoping for because I want the focus to be on the flower heads. So really, I think this is just right. The last thing we need to add in here to finish off this piece is the stamen area of the flowers. And I think with these, I'll try painting the main portion of each line with just some pure concentrated white paint first. And then I'll take a touch of cadmium orange and add that to the bottom half of that line and let it blend in a little bit to sort of get a two-toned effect. Now, I actually can't see the pencil lines for these anymore, so I'm just going to have my outline drawing sitting here off to the side of me, and I'll use that as sort of a reference as to where I might like to paint these. Really, you can paint as many as you want, just whatever makes your painting look good. I really like that. This is turning out really nice. I think I'll just go ahead and paint in the other flower stamen lines next, and then we can come back in and paint in the circle tops for them in just a minute. Okay, well done. I will paint the tops of these in next. Really, these are just dots of color in the shape of a circle using the white paint first. And then after I get the white dots in here, I'll come back in and add in some cadmium orange paint just at the bottoms of these circles. Wow, this turned out much better than I expected. This was so much fun to do, and it was very enjoyable to try something a little different with watercolor painting. I really hope you'll give this a try sometime, and maybe we'll have to come back and give some metallic paints a try on this black paper as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to watch today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.